Take your Bibles and turn to Matthew 24 for the start today. I'm not going to have you bounce around too much in keeping with my regular style, and the reason is because I have trouble keeping up when the pastor goes from page to page to page to page. So we're going to be in two places. If it helps you to know right now, Matthew 24 and Revelation 21 is where we're going to be today. And I'm going to start with a reminder from the last time I was up here, which was in 2 Peter. You don't need to go there. I would have given you that already. 2 Peter 1:12. Therefore, I intend to remind you constantly of these things, even though you know them and are well established in the truth that you now have. That really resonated with me when we read through it as part of our devotional. I said to Ruth Ann that morning, the next time I speak, I'm going to be talking about 2 Peter. And the next time I spoke, I talked about 2 Peter. And it's still there. I don't have a new message for you. What I have is encouragement for you. It may not seem that way at the beginning, but the point is we're looking forward to that goal. That's what we're striving for. That's what we're working for. That's what we're looking towards. So we're going to go to Matthew 24, starting in verse 3 through 14, are the signs of the end of the age. Again, I've been hoping I can do better with this than I did with that letter I was trying to read earlier. As Jesus was sitting on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately. Tell us, they said, when will this happen, and what will be the sign of your coming and the end of the age? Jesus answered, watch out that no one deceives you, for many will come in my name claiming I am the Christ, and will deceive many. You will hear of wars and rumors of wars, but see that you are not alarmed. Such things must happen, but the end is still to come. I'm going to hold my finger at the end of that one for a second, because have we heard of wars and rumors of wars? Does anybody come up on? Just this week in the news, China is telling their citizens get ready for war, and they're preparing their armies. North Korea has been testing missiles and telling their armies to be prepared for war, and they've been bothering South Korea quite a bit. Russia is at war. Okay? And Russia is saying if NATO gets involved, they're prepared to fire nuclear weapons at the U.S. They're ready to do that. There is so much nonsense in the news around the war in Ukraine that, Ukraine is winning and Ukraine is embarrassing Russia and pushing them back and blah, blah, blah. No, it's not. If you can get online, you can get to some European news sites and find the truth, which is why Trudeau desperately wants to block you from seeing the truth. Before long, if his bill passes, I could go to jail for life for saying something like that. Lifetime in jail for saying I don't like the Prime Minister. But yet if I raped a child, I would get maybe 6-7 years in jail. Isn't that disgusting? That saying that disgusted me. Okay? But this is the world that we're living in now. In Luke 14:31, again, don't need to go there. I said I might reference a few, and you can look at this page after if you want to get them down. But in Luke 14:31, Jesus even said, what king goes to war without first sitting down and counting the cost? And there was actual headlines in what is supposed to be legitimate news sources that said Russia was running out of bullets fighting Ukraine. I'm going to invade a country. I don't think I got enough bullets for it, but hey. Putin is not stupid, okay? He's not that stupid anyway, right? It's so ridiculous. Yeah, he's running out of bullets. Sweden has been telling their citizens there's going to be a war in Europe in the next 2, 3, 5 years. Be ready for it. They're telling their citizens to prepare, stock up and be ready. This could happen. It doesn't mean they're going to come after us. It doesn't mean we're going to have to go fight. But if there's a major war in Europe, you're going to be impacted by it. Brace yourself for it. And what did Jesus say just here? This is only the first part of it too. You will hear of wars and rumors of wars, but see that you're not alarmed. Such things must happen, but the end is still not to come. We know there's a war taking place in Gaza. And as many pro-Palestinian protests as there are going on, and as much tugging at the heartstrings as showing the plight of Palestinian children, the simple fact is, if you quit, Hamas will rearm and attack again. And they've done it over and over and over and over. Israel's only choice is to completely demolish them. That means maybe sacrificing the 100 and some hostages who are still there. That's a horrible thing to say if you're a family member of one of those hostages, but you almost have to count them as a casualty of war. You almost have to do that, because if you stop, Hamas will rearm and they'll dig more tunnels and they will throw more. You will never have peace so long as they're there. The Palestinian people need to see that, recognize that, and say, you know what, we're not going to back Hamas anymore. They're hiding over here. Go get them. Get them out of here, then the aid trucks can come in and then we can get back to a normal life. You can't just blame Israel for a genocide, for a people that won't stop firing at them. At some point, I said that last time I was speaking here, you get backed up so far you won't back up anymore. And I think Israel's at that point. They're just not going to back up anymore. And I don't blame them, because you won't have peace as long as there are people who want to push you. And people seem to forget in the pro-Palestinian protests that their mandate is to push Israel out of existence. It's one or the other. It really does come down to one or the other. There I go to jail again. I can't say stuff like that. Not in this country. Lebanon has still been firing shots at Israel. Because of the war in Gaza, that takes all the headlines, but they've been exchanging gunfire the whole time. The rebels in Yemen firing on ships, and they're trying to affect international trade. They're going on with that. You know about the unrest in Haiti? That's made the news. The U.S. is going in there to prop up their new puppet government. Going to jail for that too. I'll be in handcuffs very soon. I think I'm going to get fitted. I'm a small wrist. You don't need big handcuffs for me. Years ago, the citizens of Haiti rose up against their president, said, we want this guy out, we want to have a new election, we want to have a new president. And the United States, the country that goes around the world pushing people around saying they need to have democracy and we're going to help them get it, went back in there and propped the other guy back up. I really don't know what the U.S. has going on in Haiti, but it's something they want to keep secret. It's very important to them. So they're sending soldiers in there now to bring peace to the country and to support democracy. Horse crap. They're going to put up who they want in power. That's what they're going to do. Let's be realistic here. This is why you go to jail when you tell the truth. Right? They're not just, if they were all about democracy, they would have let the people pick their own leader years ago. They're not. They have military bases there. I think there's minerals like oil there. There's drugs that flow through there. And there's a lot of conspiracy theories that the CIA is founded on drug traffic. Because drugs can be stopped. You can stop the flow of drugs, especially when they come in by the ton, by shiploads. You can stop that. Yeah, there's something going on. Follow the money. Didn't I say that a little while back? You want to know what's going on, follow the money. How many of you have heard about the unrest going on in the Congo right now? Maybe not too many have heard about that. The UN actually, in this article that I read this week, said it, and this is with Gaza happening, said this issue in the Congo is one of the biggest humanitarian crises in the world right now. More than 250,000 people displaced in a week. And they're fighting over resources. I forgot the whole story. The country next door is backing rebels that are coming in, and they're not going after infrastructure, they're going after citizens. Everyday normal people just doing their own thing, trying to make their own lives, and they're coming into villages and slaughtering them and pushing them out. Just to be mean. Just to be mean. This is all going on in the world right now. So wars and rumors of wars, don't be alarmed. I'm not alarmed. I remember many years ago talking to Rutan's Uncle Bill. He was a great guy. And we got together, it was just him and I standing there, and he said, what do you think about all these things going on in the world? And this was way back when we lived in Keswick. What do you think of all these things going on? There was only him and I there, and they were like, we love it. It's all in Revelations. It means Jesus is coming soon. And we looked like, who's listening to us? There was nobody else there. Love it. Do not be alarmed. They have to happen. Nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. All know that. There will be famines. Famines is the big news about Gaza. The big news in Congo is the famine that it's causing. The letter we just read, unless they drill a well, they can't grow rice. Rice is a staple in Asian countries. And for 3 years, they haven't been able to grow rice. As soon as the war broke out in Ukraine, There was concern of famine because of the amount of wheat that they export. Part of that was to tug at the world's heartstrings, but there will be famines and earthquakes in various places. We had this week in 1 hour 200 and something earthquakes under the ocean bed just off Vancouver. I don't know if it's happened yet, but they were expecting a volcanic eruption under the ocean. And they're all excited about studying the effect on marine life and the effect on the crust of the earth underneath the ocean. When that magma comes up and hits the water and cools off right away, that would be very exciting to see. And part of it makes you wonder, 100 years ago, if there was 200 earthquakes under the sea and they're like a 2.3, nobody would have known. So part of it may be that we know about them now. But ever since they started recording earthquakes back in the 50s or 60s, they have gone up exponentially every year since then. There's been more and more and more. And it's not just because the equipment's getting better to see them. There's just more of them. They've been able to feel them. Prior to that, you could only feel it if it was big enough to shake your house. But even these little ones. And there's always an earthquake before there's a volcanic eruption, and there's tons of stuff like that going on. But all these are the beginning of the birth pains. That's all it said. You'll be handed over to be prosecuted and put to death, and you will be hated by all nations because of me. At that time, many will turn away. And this is the one to warn you about and maybe to worry about a little bit here. And it's leading into the second part of the message here. But at that time, many will turn away from the faith and will betray and hate each other. And many false prophets will appear and deceive many people. Why are they going to deceive many people? We've had warnings before. And again, things that we know, things that we need to be reminded of. There will be preachers with itching ears. There will be people who are afraid to go to jail, that will say what you want to hear. And I love that analogy. They'll hold your hand and merrily march down to the gates of hell with you, because they're not telling you the truth. They're not doing anything for your soul. They're just making you feel good. You're not God. Ouch. Sorry to inform you that. You're not God. You're not in control. You're not in charge. It's not all about you. It's about God. It's about Jesus. It's about faith and worship and praise. And there's a verse that says, if you love me, you'll obey my commandments. As simple as that. If you love me, you'll obey my commandments. It also says those commandments are not burdensome. These are references that I didn't write down. They're coming to me now. Okay. I printed this off yesterday. And then within 5 minutes, I made some changes and printed off a different page. And and here I am this morning with more stuff popping up. It all relates back to, I intend to remind you constantly of these things, even though you know them. That just echoed with me. And how would it happen that we would follow a false prophet that would appear to deceive people? Or how we would turn away from the faith and betray each other and hate each other? How would that happen? Because we're stopped reminding ourselves of the basics. I've mentioned before, and we're going to the end of Revelations because we want to end with some good news. But at the beginning of Revelations is the letters to all the churches, and almost every letter starts with the same thing: you lost your first love. Not all of the letters, but I think out of the 7 churches, 5 of them said, you've forgotten your first love. You can't forget your first love. So that's why we're to encourage each other and take heart that there will be wars and rumors of wars, that nation will rise against nation, that there will be great famines and earthquakes in various places. We also need to take care that we don't fall under false prophets. Many will turn away from the faith and betray and hate each other. Many false prophets will appear and deceive many people because of the increase of wickedness. And this is one that we have to concern. I know I have to watch myself for. I'll just raise my own hand on this one. Because of the increase of wickedness, the love of most will grow cold. There's such an increase in wickedness, and it angers me. It does. It boils my potatoes. That's the nicest way to say it. It does get me going, but I can't forget that I still have to love people. I can't let that anger for the wickedness harden my heart to a point where I stop loving. And God can turn anybody. He took Saul on the way to Damascus and said, why are you persecuting me? You blinded him until he heard. until somebody came and opened his eyes again and taught him the faith. But this was the man who stood there holding the coats of the people who were stoning Stephen to death. He wasn't a sort of bad guy up until he was wicked. He went to the church and got letters. He was on his way to Damascus. I'm going to kick down any door of anybody who's trying to hold a Bible study in their house. I'm going to drag him out in the street and kill them. That's what he was doing. When the Lord stopped him and said, "What are you doing, dude? Turn around and go the other way." And he dedicated the rest of his life to telling people about that. The love of most will grow cold because of the increase of wickedness in the world. There will be an increase of wickedness, and it's painful to see. But he who stands firm to the end will be saved. There's maybe our first little bit of encouragement. It's going to happen. Famines are going to happen. Wickedness is going to rule. How many times have we said lately, evil is being called good and good is being called evil? But we can't stop loving. If we stop loving, what will happen? Who is going to be encouraged to come and sit in church with us if we're just as bitter and angry and mean as everybody else outside? What brings them here is that difference. It's the fellowship that they seek. I'm part of an online ministry, and I've said this too. When people are searching, statistically, if they're online searching, they are really searching. The Holy Spirit is moving in their hearts already if they're looking for it online. And in 1 week, I had 3 different new people join that said, "I think we're in the end times and I'm scared. I think this is the end and I'm scared. How do you feel about that?" I said, "Yeah, this is the end and you should be scared." That's what's happening. Everything is being laid out here. But there are people who are, and these people, I need to know Jesus. Am I going to turn them away? Hell no. Sorry. No, I'm not going to turn them away to hell. No. Not going to happen. I can't lose that love. But I can get wound up. I can. What are you laughing at? Who is that lady? Over there laughing while I'm in the middle of my sermon here. Jeez. Yes, I can get wound up. But he who stands firm in the faith will be saved. And this gospel of the kingdom will be preached in the whole world as a testimony to all the nations, and then the end will come. And there's a lot of reference around the end coming, and first of all, the word being preached. Everybody will have an opportunity. Nobody is going to stand before God on the day of judgment and say, "Nobody told me. I didn't know." And I've talked to a lot of people say, "I'll believe it when I see it." I said, when you see it, it's going to be too late. When you're standing before God, it's going to be too late. I've heard people, "When I get in front of God, I'm going to tell him," okay, good luck with that, buddy. Good luck with all that. Yeah, when you stand before God, I was working with the youth, and we were at a youth rally event, and one of the speakers talked about how people look when they get caught with their hand in the cookie jar. He said there's going to be billions of people with their hand in the cookie jar. When they're standing in front of God, everything they thought they were going to say is going to melt in the presence of such an incredible being. You're not going to be saying it. You're not going to tell him what should have happened in the world. We've had this conversation lately that there is no such thing as darkness. Darkness is the absence of light. And I love it. And in fact, I read a thing this week that went beyond that. So darkness is the absence of light. There's no such thing as cold. Cold is the absence of heat. They don't measure cold, they measure thermal energy. And when there's no thermal energy, then things freeze. The less energy there is, the more cold. When you get to absolute 0 Kelvin, nothing lives. There is no heat whatsoever. We were reading last time I was here about how a space, the darkest of darkness, is reserved for some. The darkest of darkness. Absolutely no light, completely separated from God who is light. And what was great about the article I was reading is there's no evil. Evil is the absence of good. Because there's arguments out there that God created Lucifer, therefore God created evil. But no. Evil exists when there's no good around. If we lose our love, there's no good left in us. So no matter how bad it gets, we can't lose that. That's what we have to keep. Philippians is on our way back to Romans, but we don't have to go there once again. I press forward toward the mark for the prize of the high calling of God in Christ Jesus. That's what Paul's whole desire and his whole drive in his life is. I press forward to the prize. And that's what we need to maybe be reminded of from time to time. As bad as things get, as ugly as things get, we remember what our purpose is to love, to be a light in the darkness. I shared last time with you about Billy Graham in the Aladome in Houston. They cut all the lights off. This was a dome stadium. It was pitch black in there till he lit a candle. And a stadium that holds 80,000 plus people could see by the light of a candle. And then more people lit candles till people outside were phoning 911 said, the Aladome's on fire. Just because of all the light that was in there. That's what it was made. Paul said, I press toward the mark for the prize of the high calling of God in Christ Jesus. Paul had a touch of an advantage. He saw Jesus. He was face to face with Jesus. He heard the voice of Jesus saying, why are you persecuting me? What are you doing? That changed his life. And my entire life, I have thought, I would love to hear God come and say, Brad, go that way. Do this. Or you know what's even better? I was in sales years ago, and salespeople, for the most part, 98% of salespeople are motivated by the money. And, they run us through these personality tests and all that stuff, and they were amazed that I'm not motivated by money. I was motivated by reassurance that I'm doing a good job. To have Jesus come down and say, you're doing okay, bud, that would be cool. Even if he had to come down and say, what the heck are you doing? At least then he would set me on the right path. But you know what keeps me moving? Being reminded constantly of things I already know. Right? In John 20:29, Jesus said to Thomas, because you have seen me, you have believed. Thomas didn't even take the word of the other disciples. All of the other disciples, Jesus came back, he came back, we saw him, we were talking to him, we had fish with him. Thomas said, yeah, well, I believe it when I see it. Well, hopefully it's not too late when you see it. He said, I'll believe it when I see it. So Jesus came back, and Jesus said, go ahead, here's the hole, put your fingers in my side, knock yourself out. Thomas didn't have to go that far. He said to the other disciples, if I see the holes in his hand, if I put my fingers in his side where they pierced him, then I'll believe it. I'm not going to believe the guys I've been in ministry with for the past 3.5 years, walking around, seeing the miracles, Jesus. I'm not going to believe you guys. Right? I need to see it for myself. Jesus said, because you have seen me, you have believed. Blessed are they who have not seen me and have believed. How many of you have actually laid eyes on Jesus? Hands up. No hands. I could ask that to a church with 1 million people in it and not see hands go up. But I live by that. That's that reassurance that comes from the scripture right there. Blessed are they who have not seen me and have believed. So we're looking forward to the mark, and we're looking forward to Revelation 21. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth have passed away, and there was no longer any sea. And I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride, beautifully dressed for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne say, now the dwelling of God is with men, and he will live with them. They will be his people, and God himself will be with them and be their God. We'll see him. We will get to see him. We'll be face to face with him. And then a verse that many of you have heard many times, but I will constantly remind you of these things, even though you know them, because this is what we look forward to. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death, or mourning, or crying, or pain. There will be no more death, no mourning for someone else that died, no pain, no suffering, no crying, for the old order of things has passed away. All of that is gone now. That is the mark that we look forward to. It's all past. It's all gone. And how many times does Scripture tell us our life here is a vapor? Need to be reminded of that. We seem to think it takes forever until you get to the end of it and you look back and say, where did that go? We still sit down now and say, we've been, in August, it'll be 8 years in Berks Falls. We said, where did that go? It feels like we just moved here still. And we were reading something in Daniel. We were reading Daniel yesterday when they went into captivity. And between two sentences, 3 years passed. He went into captivity, and in 3 years of training before he was brought before Nebuchadnezzar, so that Nebuchadnezzar could question him, and it turned out that he was head and tails above everybody else in the kingdom and what God had blessed him with to learn. But 3 years. We read the story. Yeah, Daniel went there, and then he did this, and he interpreted that. He lived there for, I lost the math now. He was there for like 90-something years. His entire life was in captivity, and almost his whole life in captivity in Babylon. He was there through the entire reign of Nebuchadnezzar, and then Nebuchadnezzar's son, when Nebuchadnezzar lost his mind and thought he was an ox and was eating grass and laying out in the field, and he was there till Cyrus came and took over Babylon. But we read the story. The story of Joseph. How long was he in jail for? First of all, his brothers threw him in a pit and sold him. And then he worked his way up to a prominent place. But because he wouldn't defile himself, he was thrown in jail. And while he was in jail, he never lost his faith. He kept interpreting dreams. So somebody remembered, oh yeah, I knew a guy back when I was in prison. And now he's the head of Egypt and he's saving Israel. But how many years went by? So we have to remember this is what we're pressing forward to. That it's our life here is very short, comparatively. And I always say, part of the problem is you can't understand forever. When you were a little kid, summer lasted forever. But summer ended and then you had to go back to school. What's forever? You think of if you live to be 105, eternity is 105 times 105 times 105. There's no end to eternity. What we're looking forward to is forever, and forever and forever, he will wipe away every tear. There will be no death, no mourning, no crying, no pain. All of that will be passed away. He who was seated on the throne said, I am making everything new. Then he said, write this down. These words are trustworthy and true. He said to me, it is done. It is done. When Jesus was on the cross, John 19:30, Jesus said, it is finished. I'm sure there was more than that, but that's the reference I grabbed here. It is finished is what Jesus said. That's a different Greek word than it is done. It is finished is from and I don't know if I'm doing this, it's T-E-L-E-H-O, and I think they put it that way so we could, how it would sound to us in English. Teleho. It means to complete, to execute, to conclude. What's interesting about the one that Jesus, when he said it is finished, one of the meanings is to discharge a debt. When Jesus said it is finished, he said your debt's been paid. That's what he was saying when it is finished, and that's when he gave up the ghost. Last thing he said before he left this world, your debt's been paid. It's done. It is finished. And I thought it was the same thing. The reason I went back and looked at that reference, because I again, remembering what we've read over and over again. Jesus said it is finished. He didn't say it is done. He said it is finished. At least that's the translation. And sometimes it's very helpful to understand the Greek that it was originally written in. And that's why I went back and I looked in the concordance. I've got a wonderful online Bible, eSword, that you can get all kinds of different versions, so you can look at different ways it was interpreted, but you can get one that's got the Greek. You can click on the word and it says this is the verb and this is the meanings around the verb, and that's where I got this from. Tel eho, to conclude, to discharge the debt, it is done. In Revelation 21:6 that we just read, he said unto me, it is done. The same thing was said in Revelation 16:17. I didn't want to get into that because we've heard about the 7 bowls of the 7 wrath, the plagues that will come upon the earth. I talked last time how cool is it going to be when the beetles come out that are stinging everybody and causing great sores and great pain so that men want to die, but they can't. But these won't touch the people with the mark of God on them. If we're not pre-trib and we are here, I think we're going to be gone. I think the people who are here with the mark of God are the people who are saved after we leave. And why would they be saved after we leave? Because we're going to be gone and they're going to be, Brad tried to tell me about that. And now he's gone, and so is Ruth Ann, and so is Roger and Anna and Kathy and everybody's. All of these people I knew that went to church all the time are gone now. Maybe I should pick up my Bible and start reading. We know there are other people going to hide under rocks, and they're going to hide in a cave and say, rocks fall on us so God can't find us. The guy who carved the cave out of the rock and built the rocks is not going to find you in the rocks. You didn't learn much in your time on earth, did you? Didn't get much out of that. So how are they going to be saved? They're going to be saved because there was something different about us, and they knew that, and then we were gone. Pick up the Bible and start reading the Bible. What's going on in here? So at the end of the 7 bowls being poured out, the angel said, "It is done." Same words. The same words. So God is just repeating to John here what the angel said at the end of it all when he poured out the last of God's wrath on the earth. It is done. But that's different. Some of the translations say it's all come to pass or it has happened. But it doesn't have the impact of what the verb actually means. Ginomahi. Ghinomahee. Ginomahi. To be ended, to be finished. Now Jesus said it is finished, but what he meant by it is finished is the debt's been paid. This, I think the better one out of this, and there's a whole paragraph on it, there's a lot of stuff in here of all the different things, but the ones I highlighted is to be ended. It's done. And we saw just before that, why is there no more tears and no more pain and no more suffering? Because that age is gone. That age has passed away. Again, I don't have a reference here, but the Holy Spirit's bringing things back this morning. Jesus, what he tells his disciples, I'm going to prepare a place for you. In fact, the King James Version, I'll never forget this either, was sitting in a Ben's Bible study, and my King James says, I go to prepare a mansion for you. It's not just a place. I'm not going to just prepare a room. I'm going to prepare a mansion. And one of the other men's with the different things said, I go to prepare a room for you, is what his said. He said, I like your interpretation better. He's going to prepare a mansion for us. That's the thing, again, that we need to be reminded of, that we need to look forward to. Jesus has gone ahead and done this. In the Jewish culture, if a man was going to get married, first of all, he'd go to the woman and make sure she was cool with that. Okay? And then he'd go away and he would build a house for them to live in. And the father would come and take a look at it and say, that floor's not level. Okay? She's going to want this window to open in the summer to let a breeze come in here. You call that a roof? Fix a few things. And he would do that. And then the father would finally come along and say, you know what? You've got it right now. Everything's sealed up. The rain's not going to come in. The wind's not going to come in. Rodents aren't going to come in. You built yourself a good place, son. Go get your bride. Because we know the stories. It says the brides are out in the field. They're working. They got to go on with their life, but they got their dress laid out on their bed because at any moment the groom could come along and say, we're doing this now. And she's got to run inside and get her dress on and they're going to get married. And the whole village is going to celebrate. Everybody's going to come to the wedding feast. But you never know when it's going to happen because it's when the father says, all right, now you got a good place. Now you go get your bride. When God says to Jesus, now's the time. Now you're ready. Go get your bride. The bride is the church. That's when the church is going to be lifted up. That is what we look forward to. We're going to have lunch this afternoon. We're going to have a ball, aren't we? We always have good fellowship. There's always talking. There's always laughter, conversations that carry on. I remember a conversation with somebody once saying, when you get to heaven, everything's going to be at peace. No more tears, no more pain, no more suffering, no more sorrow. But what about, let's face it, all of our families not going to heaven. Not everybody that we know and love is going to accept the word and is going to. But you've ever been in a situation where you're having that kind of fun and there's just laughter and joy and the rest of the world doesn't exist? Because one of his arguments is, how can there be no mourning when you're there, but you know that some of your kids aren't there? Or your sister or brother aren't there, your parents aren't there. Some people really close to you are not there. How are you going to enjoy that? You're not going to think about it. There'll be so much else going on you won't think about it. We'll get downstairs this afternoon, and that's what it's going to be. It's going to be like that. You add to that, compound that a little bit. We're down there and we're having our lunch and we're having our joyful time of celebration together, and in comes Aaron and his family. It's 2 weeks before we'll see it. But here they come. Here comes Abe and Dorothy, and they're healthy, and they're walking, and Abe is telling those dad jokes that he thinks are funny, and it make you smile because he thinks it's funny. And Neil is back there with us. Everybody who's gone before is there now. Are you going to think about anybody who's not there? Probably not. Now, we might, when we're down, I might think of my grandkid, my little boy Jack. He loved being down there with Aaron's little guy, Caleb. And I was surprised because he could be a grouchy little monkton. But we brought him here and we took him downstairs and he loved it. And Jen is asking if he wants a treat. She opened the cupboard and there's gold bears and goldfish and bear paws. And those! Right away to the bear paw. That's the kind of celebration that we're going to be having. That's what we look forward to when Jesus comes and takes the church. It's because it is done. It is finished. The house is ready. The mansion is ready for us. And there we go.
Will I still have to clean the church?
No. Unless you love doing it, Ivan, and that's your job. If you love doing it, then that might be your job. Right? That's why I say I'm going to be looking after animals. I think what's great is I don't think animals in heaven are going to poop. That's maybe the part of the job that's not so much fun. So I'm not going to have to worry about that. You know what's the most difficult part of my job is praying. That's not a hard thing to do. When the water freezes, that's incredibly difficult to get worked around because for the water to be freezing, it's freezing. And now you're out there in the freezing cold, undoing clasps that hold pipes together that don't want to come apart to pour hot water in to get the ice. No water's going to freeze. The living water is going to flow down the center of the street in heaven. If we keep reading in 21, we're going to see this. Living water is going to, I'm never going to have to worry about water freezing. I'm not going to have to scoop anything. And I do, again, in my heaven, I'm going to be able to pet tigers and lions and watch them race and praise them for how wonderfully God created them. Use your gifts. How wonderfully they are created. That's the kind of thing that I'm looking forward to. Where was I here? Did anyone know that? 6. People are paying attention, right? Okay. He said to me, "It is done. It is ended. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. To him who is thirsty, I will give to drink without cost from the spring of the water of life. He who overcomes will inherit all of this." Who is he who overcomes? He who remembers to love. He who doesn't stop loving. Even when the world gets incredibly wicked, I don't think we've got really a good taste of what's coming. But he who is faithful to the end, he who doesn't forget to keep loving, he who remembers the commandments and follows the commandments, he who's willing to stand up and say, wrong is wrong, okay, arrest me and put me in jail, and when I'm in jail, I'll talk to the other prisoners about what is right and what is wrong, whether they want to hear it or not. In fact, there's a verse we read recently, again, and I've said this many times before. Part of my problem is I don't remember chapter and verse. I remember the words. But some will go into captivity and some will die by the sword. Before the Jews were carried off into Babylon, God said to them, some of you are going to be better off to go captive. When they come to take you away, lay down your arms and go with them. It'll be better for you than staying here. So when the time comes, our prayer regularly is, Lord, give us wisdom. What do we do? When they come for our guns, do we send them out one bullet at a time or do we just hand them over? Right? My preference is one at a time, but that's my flesh talking. Okay? So what do? Am I one who's going to die by the sword because I'm supposed to stand up and fight for what's right? Am I one who's supposed to go into captivity? And because I'm in captivity, it'll be, God will work. God is in charge, not Satan. God is in charge. If somebody comes and drags me off my farm because I'm growing food for people, that may upset somebody. That may be the spark that ignites them to stand up and fight. If they drag my riddled corpse off my farm because I fought for it until I was killed, somebody might say they should never have been in there bothering him in the first place. All he was doing was trying to grow food for people. Meat is not going to make the planet overheat and blow up. I don't for the life of me understand how these environmental nut jobs can say, stop eating meat, we'll save the world. I don't get it. You know what will save the world? Stop feeding them stuff they're not supposed to be eating. When they eat grass and they poop on the grass and the grass grows and they eat more, it's good for the soil. And the healthier the soil is, the healthier the plants are, the cleaner the air becomes because they suck up tons and tons of toxins out of the air while they're breathing what they do. Animals are good for the planet. Maybe their problem is eating too many of them. There won't be enough. Maybe that, I don't know. I don't see how eating meat is a bad thing. I really don't. So I'm going to keep doing that. But what is it? What am I supposed to do? He who overcomes will inherit all of this, and I will be his God, and he will be my son. Interesting here, but the cowardly. You ever heard this verse before? We've not been given a spirit of fear. Cowardly is an act of no faith. It's interesting again. I flipped the TV on this morning so I could record the Jays game because I'm going to stay here and enjoy lunch, but I don't want to miss the ball game. What wonderful technology. But when I flipped it on, there's a preacher talking about not having a spirit of fear. God is in charge. If it's my time to go, it's my time to go. You ever had one of those questions come? If you knew when and where you were going to die, would you want to know? If somebody knew and could tell you, would you want to know? And a lot of people say, no, I don't want to know. I remember a guy said, yeah, I'd love to know. Because if I know where and when I'm going to die, then I know I can do whatever I want in between and I'm not going to get hurt. Because if God has determined that's my day, that's my hour, that's my minute, that's my time, nobody's going to change that. What God opens, no one can close. What God closes, no one can open. If he says March 26, 2085, I'll be 122 years old. If that's what he says, then in the meantime, I'm going bungee jumping, skydiving. I'm going to take a rocket to I can't be killed until that time because that's what God appointed my time to be. But it's so interesting in here, the cowardly. The unbelieving, that's normal. The vile, the murderers, the sexually immoral, those who practice magic arts, the idolaters, and all liars, their place will be in the fiery lake of burning sulfur. That is the second death. The way to avoid the second death is to live, live for Christ. Live for God. Live the faith. Do not have a spirit of fear. We've not been given a spirit. Some translations say a spirit of timidity. Some say a spirit of fear. We've been given a spirit of strength and hope in God. If God is for us, I don't even have to finish the sentence, right? If God be for us, who can stand against us? Nobody. And it was interesting, this pastor, the way he was going on this morning. And that was just a few minutes before I left the house to come to church here. And it's worked its way right into the sermon right there. The enemy cannot break through that hedge of protection that God has put around you and say, I'm going to take them 2 years earlier, or 5 years earlier, or 20 years earlier. Can't do it. Why? And we know that. How do we know that? He referenced it in his said, I bet you're thinking right now, Job. God was sitting there talking to his people, and Satan came along and he said, where have you been? Oh, I've been walking back and forth on the earth, messing with men. That's what I do. God said, have you considered my son Job? And Satan said, yeah, but you give him everything. No wonder he praises you. Take that stuff away and he's gone. God knew better. He said, go, take it away from him. But don't hurt him. Who's still in charge? Then he said, okay, make him sick, but you can't kill him. Gave him boils and pains so much that his loving and wonderful, supportive wife said, why don't you just curse God and die already? What a sweetheart. Don't we all want a partner like that? Just curse God and die already. End your misery. What's eternal misery? I'll take sores for the last couple of years of my life over the fiery furnace of hell forever and ever and ever. Any day. But God was in control of the entire situation the whole time. And we see a huge tragedy. All of his children, boom, gone when the house collapsed.